All right, hello once again. This is Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College, and I've been going over the PowerPoint presentations and occasionally dabbling in some code for Murock's Android Programming 2nd edition by Joel Murock as part of the AWD1112 Java programming class. We are in the middle of Chapter 10 of 18 in our textbook, and now the author says we're ready to see how we put the pieces of the newsreader app together. So what we see in this figure here is the XML for the activity items layout. You can see that this uses a linear layout, which we've talked about earlier. All right, and it has a vertical orientation. It begins by displaying the text view widget, all right, for the title of the feed. Then it uses a list view to display the different items for the feed. The list view widget uses the list view layout, all right, which is shown on the next slide here, to display each item. Now, the author mentions down at the bottom, he says, since this was described earlier in the chapter, you shouldn't have much trouble understanding how it works. Well, in life, everything is relative. All right? So, can you understand it? I'm not sure. All right? But starting in the next figure here, they show you the Java code over slides 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56, 57, 58, 59, 60, all right, and 61, which is the rest of the chapter. So they show you about 15 or so lines of code, or slides just filled with code. So as we go through this, we've got our onCreate method, and that begins by creating the file IO object from the file IO class that we'll look at in just a sec. Then it gets a reference to the text view and list view widgets for the item's activity. Next, it sets the listener. Finally, it creates a new object from the inner class called download feed. All right, that inner class from the download feed uses a background thread to download the XML for the RSS feed. When it finishes executing, it displays a message in logcat and creates a new object that's called readFeed, and it calls the execute method from that object to start it. The inner class readFeed uses the background thread to read the XML for the RSS feed and then parse it back into an RSS feed object. Both of these inner classes, both of them, specify the void type for all three generic types of the async class. The update display that you see next uses an adapter to display the items in the feed in the list view widget. When it finishes, again, it displays a message in logcat view. The onItemClick method handles the event that occurs when the user clicks on one of the items. So the code starts the item activity and uses an explicit intent to pass all the data to that activity. All right, starting on page 330, so again, this is just a continuation here of what we've been talking about. But starting here, this is figure 1019, which begins on pages 330 and 331 and pretty much goes to the next about the next 4 pages. The file IO class begins by defining the constant URL string right in here, and that's basically the URL for the RSS feed. Then it defines another constant called file name that specifies the name of the file that's going to store that feed. Then it sets up a context object to store the context for the app. The constructor that's in here accepts that context object And a single statement there sets the variable name context for the class to the context object parameter. The download file method downloads the XML for the RSS feed from the internet and stores it in the file. Conversely, the read file method is going to, again, conversely, it reads the specified file and returns an RSS feed object. So what you see in the figure here, all right, is the associated code. After that, on page 333, you see the XML for the activity item layout, which uses a scroll view to make sure that the user can scroll up and down if there's too much information to fit on the screen. Then it uses a linear layout with vertical orientation to display the 4 text widgets for the title, the publication date, the description, and the link of the data item. All right, and it sets the color of the 4th text view widget to blue to indicate that it's a hyperlink to be clicked. Now, figure 1021, which starts on 334 and goes just to 335, and this is the end of it here, it shows the Java code for the item activity class. When this activity is started, its onCreate method gets all the necessary data from the intent object and displays it on the 4 widgets that we talked about earlier. If the user clicks on the text widget for the link, the onClick method is executed, which starts by creating a URI object, and it uses an implicit intent to view the URI in a web browser. So the whole thing, as we finish up here for chapter 10, the whole thing, if we bring it up, all right, and I'm not even sure if we bring this up, let's see. As I'm looking here, and there's a bunch of stuff in red, etc., and it says the SDK is not defined, so it's not even going to let me run this. All right. But ideally, by going through the code, we have discussed threads, files, adapters, and intents. In the next chapter, chapter 11, the author discusses how you can make improvements to the Newsreader app. So I will be back with that presentation in just a couple minutes.